In 2010, Kristine and Michael Barnett of Indiana celebrated a joyous occasion when they added a new child, their adopted daughter Natalia Grace, to their family. But according to the Barnetts, their life with Natalia quickly became the stuff of nightmares. They say that the 6-year-old was not a child at all, but instead a grown woman with both a physical condition that caused her to resemble a child, as well as severe mental problems. Like something from a horror film, and indeed the case bears a striking resemblance to the 2009 film The Orphan, the Barnetts claim that Natalia terrorized both them and their biological children. What's more, Kristine began to notice that her quote-unquote 6-year-old daughter had adult characteristics like having her period and using vocabulary far too advanced for a child. Just a couple of years after the adoption, the Barnetts moved to Canada and left Natalia behind, claiming that this adult woman could care for herself. But Natalia Grace has remained defiant. She insists that she was just a little girl when the Barnetts adopted, then abandoned her. Though the Barnetts say that Natalia is now in her 30s, she claims to be just a teenager and is living today with another family. To date, neither Natalia nor the Barnetts have backed down from their stories. You're listening to History Uncovered, brought to you by the digital publisher All That's Interesting, where we explore the uncharted corners of the natural world and the world past. I'm All That's Interesting staff writer Kalina Fraga. Today, we're examining the disturbing story of Natalia Grace Barnett, the orphan girl accused of being an adult. Kristine and Michael Barnett saw Natalia Grace as the answer to all their prayers. The Indiana couple already had biological children, but had always wanted a big family, a goal complicated by Kristine's difficult pregnancies. So when an adoption center in Florida offered them a little girl from Ukraine, they leapt at the chance to adopt her. Just 24 hours after receiving the initial call in May 2010, Kristine and Michael were in Florida, meeting Natalia Grace for the first time. They agreed to a quick adoption and didn't ask any questions about why Natalia's previous family had given her up so abruptly. All the Barnetts learned was that she'd been born in Ukraine in 2003, and that she had a form of dwarfism that caused short stature, vision problems, and skeletal abnormalities. As Kristine later recalled of their first meeting, quote, Natalia was extremely nervous. You could see she was going to need a lot of support and care. We did notice immediately in the parking lot that she couldn't walk. There was nothing in the paperwork stating that, unquote. But Kristine alleges that there was much, much more that adoption officials failed to report in Natalia Grace's adoption paperwork. When she gave her new daughter a bath for the first time, Kristine says that she noticed that Natalia Grace had pubic hair, saying, quote, I was so shocked. I had just been told she was a 6-year-old and it was very apparent she wasn't, unquote. From there, Kristine's doubts about her new daughter only deepened. According to her, Natalia Grace seemed to speak with more poise and sophistication than any 6-year-old. She seemed uninterested in toys or dolls, and Kristine found bloody clothing in Natalia's trash, which suggested to her that she had already gotten her period. Kristine needed answers. According to her, she brought Natalia Grace to a doctor who ran bone density tests and came up with a surprising conclusion. The 6-year-old was actually 14. This wasn't enough for Kristine and Michael Barnett to back out of the adoption entirely, but then they say that Natalia Grace began to act out in ways that made them fear for their lives. According to Kristine and Michael Barnett, the curly-haired girl they adopted soon became a violent terror. Starting in 2011, they say that Natalia Grace started standing over their beds at night and threatening to stab them in their sleep, leading the couple to hide all the sharp objects in the house. On another occasion, Kristine says that Natalia Grace tried to push her into an electric fence. Then she claimed that she caught Natalia Grace trying to poison her coffee with bleach and Windex. When Kristine asked her adopted daughter what she was doing, Kristine claims that Natalia Grace matter-of-factly told her, quote, "I'm trying to kill you," unquote. As Kristine put it, Natalia Grace was doing things, quote, "you could never imagine a little child doing," unquote, like smearing bodily fluids on the walls and trying to jump out of moving cars. Yet, according to Kristine, they still couldn't bring themselves to abandon the orphan they'd brought into their family. Instead, they tried to get Natalia Grace help by sending her to specialists so she could be treated for various psychiatric disorders. According to Kristine, these treatments only confirmed what she believed and feared, that Natalia Grace was not a child at all, but a teenager with severe mental problems. Kristine claims that her daughter suffered from disorders that only plague adults. She says that Natalia Grace laughed off bonding exercises, showed no remorse or threatening the family, calling the death threats quote-unquote fun, and, most damningly of all, confessed to her doctors that she was not a child, but was actually 18 years old. Finally, in 2012, Kristine and Michael took a dramatic step. They appealed to a judge to have their daughter's age legally changed. The judge agreed, and Natalia Grace's birth year was adjusted from 2003 to 1989, changing her age from 8 years old to 22. From that point on, legally, Natalia Grace was no longer a child. She was a grown woman. As such, the Barnetts washed their hands of her. Because another of their children, 12-year-old Jake, an autistic child prodigy, was set to start school in Canada, Kristine and Michael decided that they'd leave Natalia Grace behind. They found an apartment for Natalia in Lafayette, Indiana in 2013, paid her rent, helped her set up her new life, and moved to Canada without her. But Kristine vehemently denies that this was child abuse or child abandonment. She says, quote, "Natalia was a woman. She had periods. She had adult teeth. She never grew an inch, which would happen even with a child with dwarfism," unquote. Yet Natalia Grace denies all of it. She says that her adopted family abandoned her, leaving her completely alone when she was just 8 years old. Kristine and Michael Barnett may see their adoption of Natalia Grace as a dream that turned into a nightmare, but Natalia sees it that way too, with herself as the victim. She claims she was just 6 years old when the Barnetts adopted her, and she thought, like they did, that the adoption was the answer to her prayers. She said, quote, "I actually thought I had found the right family after bouncing around from a lot of families. I thought I had found the right family for me," unquote. Previously, Natalia says, misunderstandings had led other families to give her up. She said that before the Barnetts adopted her, she had been wrestling with one of her new siblings and accidentally hurt his arm. However, their mother thought she'd injured him on purpose and sent her away. Natalia insists that similar misunderstandings plagued her time in the Barnett family. She had never, she claims, threatened anyone's life. The poisoned coffee? Simply a misunderstanding while cleaning the kitchen, Natalia said. The stabbing threats? Natalia says they didn't happen. And as for those creepy nighttime visits, Natalia claims she would only have entered Kristine and Michael's bedroom at night if she'd had a nightmare and had run to them out of fear. While this account may seem hard to believe, there's actually plenty of evidence that backs up Natalia's story. For starters, the medical test that Kristine claimed revealed that Natalia was 14 years old and not 6, actually had a totally different result. A bone density test in 2010 suggested that Natalia was 8, just 2 years older than the adoption center had claimed. And a skeletal test 2 years later suggested she was around 11 years old. In other words, still a child. What's more, as Natalia Grace Barnett's story gained publicity, a woman in Ukraine stepped forward and claimed to be her birth mother. She backed Natalia up, saying that the girl had been born in 2003. She claimed that she was forced to give up her daughter because of her dwarfism, saying, quote, "They told me there are good people in America, they will pay for everything. The child will be normal. I was told they would do her a surgery, which I wouldn't be able to afford. They said the surgery was $80,000, unquote. Plus, Michael Barnett, who divorced his wife in 2014, allegedly even admitted that he and his wife knew that Natalia Grace was a child when they abandoned her. They'd seen the test saying as much, and his wife had encouraged Natalia to tell people she was an adult. Michael, through his attorney, denies this. Eventually, in 2019, the Barnetts were charged with neglecting their child. They were briefly arrested and released on bond. But the saga is far from over. When it comes to Natalia Grace and the Barnetts, who is in the right and who is in the wrong? Today, whether or not Natalia is a child or an adult scam artist seems to remain a matter of opinion. Before a judge filed a gag order, Kristine insisted on her innocence in a far-ranging interview with the Daily Mail in 2019. Calling the case horrifying, Kristine said, quote, "I've been truthful with people the whole time. I'm being charged by the state of Indiana for crimes against a child, when the state of Indiana has determined multiple times that Natalia was an adult. From day one, this was a mission of love. But when you bring a child into your home, you expect them to be a child," unquote. Natalia Grace also sat down and told her story in an interview with Dr. Phil that same year. Accompanied by her new guardians who had taken her in and were raising her as a teenager, she insisted that she was just 16, not in her 30s as the Barnetts claimed. To allegations that she lied to and terrorized the Barnetts, Natalia told Dr. Phil, quote, "It's not true at all," unquote. And when he asked her if she were a 33-year-old scam artist, Natalia again denied it, saying, quote, "No, no, no, I promise you I'm not," unquote. At the moment, the case against Kristine and Michael Barnett is slowly making its way through the legal system. In late 2020, a judge dismissed the neglect of dependent charges against the couple and also dismissed other neglect charges because of the statute of limitations. In early 2022, the Indiana Supreme Court let stand an appeals court ruling which affirmed that the charges must be dismissed, since the charges are based on Natalia's legal age, which, of course, the couple modified back in 2012. However, prosecutors could pursue the Barnetts for neglect based on Natalia Grace's dwarfism. Neither party has offered any comment, and to date, no future motions have been filed on the Barnetts' cases. So, is that the end of this very, very strange story? Was Natalia Grace an innocent child abandoned by her parents? Or was she, as Dr. Phil described it, a scam artist? The truth here, if it exists, is likely much more complicated. Dr. Phil even mused that Natalia Grace might not even know her own age, which, as a child abandoned as a baby, could very well be the case. For now, it remains to be seen what will happen between Natalia Grace and her former parents. And it's possible that the truth about Natalia Grace's true age may remain forever unknown.
Thanks for listening to History Uncovered. I'm History Uncovered's producer, Kit Westneat. If you like the show, help others find us by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And be sure to follow the All That's Interesting and History Revealed pages on Facebook and Real History Uncovered on Instagram. Make sure you don't miss out on the new episodes and subscribe to the History Uncovered podcast. And keep up with our latest stories at allthat'sinteresting.com. If you have a question about the show or just want to say hi, feel free to call us at 929-526-3029 or email us at podcast@allthat'sinteresting.com. This podcast is part of the Airwave Media Podcast Network. Visit airwavemedia.com to listen and subscribe to their other fine shows like Legends of the Old West and Redacted History. Until next time, keep exploring.